everybody. There's no intro here. We're just going to jump right in. You know what this is about. If you're watching this, if you're listening to this, you know that it's because you watched The Last Jedi. We watched The Last Jedi, and we're here to talk about it. We're here to break it down. We're here to tell you, talk to each other, tell each other what we liked and what we didn't like, because the reality is we haven't spoken about this movie since our last video last week when we talked about what we were going to expect of this movie.
And if you have not seen it, turn this off right now because spoilers are everywhere.
Yes. So first of all, hi, I'm Maurice Mercado. I'm joined by my good friend, JC Lagares. And so with that, if you have not seen the movie, just know that spoilers, that we're going to talk about the movie. We're going to talk about what happened in the movie. We're going to talk about what we think happened in the movie. We're going to talk about what didn't happen in the movie. So if you have not seen it, I don't know where you've been, but you need to go see it. So what we're going to do first off is we're going to talk about when we saw it, how many times have we seen it, and what our initial reaction was. And then we'll take it from there. We'll talk about what we liked, what we didn't like. And well, maybe even, I have some notes on certain things that I kind of found upon further viewing. So I don't know if you liked it or not. You don't know if I liked it or not.
No.
Although it's, anyway, okay, here we go. So I watched it Friday. I called in sick and I watched it with my wife. And it was great. I mean, the experience, of going out to the movies with my wife with no kids. That was great. And then I saw it again the following evening, Saturday night.
Okay.
You have a little bit of I don't know how you did it.
Oh my gosh. It was like the worst 2 days. And when I say the worst, I'm obviously being sarcastic here because there's a lot of bad things that have happened or I should say, waiting for a movie for 2 days is not like the worst thing in the world. However, I was so excited about this. I've been waiting for it since Force Awakens ended, last 2 years, and all my friends saw it either that Thursday evening or Friday, and I was completely I was off the grid. All my social media gone. I tried to avoid all talk of it, and it was killing me to have waited till Saturday. So I saw it Saturday night with my wife and a couple friends, and then I immediately saw it on Sunday afternoon in IMAX.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah, so that was a nice change from visually.
Yeah, neither one of my viewings were IMAX. The only difference was like the first time I saw it was in an IPIX theater, which is awesome. If you've never been to an IPIX, you basically it's like going to a comfy, beautiful, upscale restaurant and just sitting in comfy reclining chairs with your significant other and you have your little table and a waiter, and you order your food and you watch the movie, and it's a beautiful thing. It's very
They don't
pricey.
interrupt you while watching the movie, do they?
They kind of do. Like when at certain points, I think he came over twice. Like the food was ready during the trailers, so that was good. And I was so hungry that by the time the movie started, I was almost done with my food. And then they bring you complimentary popcorn, so you keep asking for more popcorn. They'll come and they'll tap you, and they just put it on the table. They're very good about it. Like they try not to interrupt you. Excuse me, but yeah, they when at some point they ask you, is that everything? And then they'll bring you the check during the movie, so that by the time the movie ends, you don't have to wait around for the check or anything.
See, I could do that for I don't know, Ace Ventura or or any comedy, but these films are just too intense. I can't be bothered.
Yeah, and that's why I needed to see it a second time. And the following evening, I saw it in a regular theater, no comfy seats, no reserved seating. It was just I got my ticket, got there super early, stood on the line outside of the theater in the hallway before they let people in, and then just like literally ran in there like a little kid and tried to hold seats for myself, my nephew, my brother, and my sister-in-law. And so that was a better viewing experience, I think, in the sense that I was able to, first of all, I didn't have the stress of, oh my gosh, it's the first time I'm seeing this movie. Oh my gosh. And I was able to just kind of watch it and focus on it.
Yeah.
And I actually picked up a lot of things that I missed.
And
And
I did too. The second viewing was a much better viewing.
This is definitely a movie that requires multiple viewings, and not just as a Star Wars fan, but just, I think, as a, if you like movies, if you like film, like adventure movies or whatever, just like, as far as like summer blockbuster, even though it's not the summer, but like, you know what I mean? Like the summer blockbuster, big movies, this is like a movie that requires more than one viewing.
Absolutely. And Star Wars films are just like that. I mean, I guess a casual fan or just a fan of film. I have friends, I'll just watch a movie one time and that's it, you know, and I respect that. But like, for those who like multiple viewings of films, it's kind of made in that way. It's just jam-packed with meaning, with like just multi-level things, story-wise, but even picture-wise, you know, what's going on in the background, just like Easter eggs everywhere. I mean, I kid you not, we talked about this briefly, but just in the last few weeks, when I saw the whole saga all over again, I still got new things from the original trilogy.
Yeah, that's crazy. I believe
and I'm like, what? I didn't recall seeing that, or you know what I mean? It was like, and it was just a nice little thing. It wasn't, you know, I mean, it wasn't anything new plot wise, but just little things there, here and there, that as a lover of film, you know, having kind of like a writer director kind of mind, even though I've never done that professionally, I appreciate it.
Yeah, definitely. I think definitely Star Wars, they're like, I mean, not to sound so pretentious, but Star Wars movies, I think, are almost like little works of art. Whether you like that art or you don't like that art, you have to appreciate it as art, and you have to really look at it. It's like one of those paintings. The more you stare at it, the more you find little things, or you know. But let's stop being around the bush. JC, did you like this movie?
Why do I go first?
You want me to go first?
Okay. Let me tell you this, Maurice. Let me tell you this.
Well, before you even open your mouth, let me just say this. This is an important part of the show right now because, again, I don't know what you think and you don't know what I think. But immediately after this movie was released, all these reviews started coming out. All these articles started coming out. And even on Rotten Tomatoes, you know,
we can't rely on Rotten Tomatoes. That's a skew. That's like they have bots.
Right, but I'm just saying, yeah. But regardless, you still can't deny that this movie is a little polarizing to fans. Fans seem to be very split, and this is like preliminary numbers. I mean, but I think that fans are split.
It's true because it's true, and it's not just like Rotten Tomatoes or Cinema Score or whatever. Like I've talked to a dozen fans, and it is.
Yeah. I mean, I listened to a podcast this week and yesterday, and they were talking about the movie, and they mentioned some things that I kind of knew, and they kind of, you know, said what they said, you know, whether they liked it or not. And I kind of took it with a grain of salt, and I kind of understand the good and the bad. However, there's another podcast that I listen to that I know these guys are a little bit more opinionated, and I haven't finished listening to it because I stopped it because they basically, right when they stopped talking about all the things that they liked, they didn't get into the things that they didn't like, and I just wanted to stop it because I really want to be able to formulate my own opinions. And I do have my own strong opinions about this movie, but I also understand both sides. Is what I'm trying to say. I understand.
I'm curious, which two podcasts? Maybe our listeners.
I listened to a podcast called The Weekly Planet.
Okay.
which is really a really great podcast about just kind of like comic books, movies, TV, and kind of like this, what we do here. And they're a lot more advanced though.
Okay.
And then another podcast that I've been listening to for years is a comic book podcast called iFanboy, and they do movie reviews, and they're the three guys that started this podcast are huge Star Wars fans. So anytime a Star Wars movie comes out or anything Star Wars related, they talk about it, and I like to listen to it because they have strong opinions, and they kind of are in our kind of age group. A little, might be a little bit older, but they're kind of in that same generation. I started listening to Rebel Force Radio's episode, and I had to stop. I have my issues with that show and some of the opinions on their show, but I had to stop because I'm like, no, I need to formulate my own opinions. I need to write some things down because I knew we were going to do this. So that being
you are
said,
the edge of your seat. I can tell that you really want to know where I stand on this.
That being said,
let me tell you that I have my opinions, so much so that I saw it Saturday, Sunday. It's Tuesday, is it? And we haven't talked. So I wrote a 1,500-word essay.
Did you turn it into the teacher?
No. I was tempted to send you, and then not only that, I wrote more. That was just one thing I wrote, because I had to get it out of me. And I knew I was processing. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I still am. In fact, let me ask you this: who is? Oh, we're on the same page here. But who is your most interesting character in this new trilogy?
Now we're talking about Force Awakens and The Last Jedi.
Yeah.
Who's the most interesting character?
Yeah.
For me.
Yeah.
That's an interesting question. I mean, I think after, I would have to say after this movie, I think it's Kylo Ren.
Okay. For me too. And just like Kylo Ren is, and what's the word I'm looking for? Conflicted.
Mm-hmm.
I'm feeling like Kylo Ren right now. And in fact, what's my tagline say?
I need someone to show me my place in all this.
Okay. The Last Jedi has got me like psychoanalyzing myself.
And that's a good thing. And I think I understand why. But answer the question. Did you like this movie?
I don't have an answer for you.
Okay.
So listen. Okay. Let's get real. My initial gut reaction, I walked out of that theater and I was shocked, dissatisfied, and borderline upset.
Wow.
Yeah. I know people that liked it, and I was jealous that they liked it because I wanted to be among them. And now listen, even in that state, leaving the theater, I was still in awe of things that occurred. But my overall, like, if I could like narrow it down, it was of disappointment and like maybe, I don't know if disillusioned is the word, but like basically they weren't positive feelings. However, that being said, I knew, just like when we opened up this talk, that there's multiple levels at work, and I need time to process. I needed time to process Force Awakens. With that one, it was more of like a feel-good, magical feeling, brought it back, but I still needed time to process that. This one, it really hit me in the gut. Like,
now what happened? What about after the second viewing?
I became angrier. And I realized, Maurice, that in these last few days, in some ways, I've been going through the stages of grief. And I think I'm settling now towards acceptance.
Now, it's funny you share all this, and I was suspecting this. I was suspecting that this was what you were going through, and I was hoping that it wasn't, but I kind of anticipated it in a way, and I understand. I think I understand because here's the thing: I love this movie. I really, really like this movie, and not as a listen. My all-time favorite Star Wars movie is always going to be this. It's always going to be Empire, and the reason, as an adult, I love Empire. As a child, I loved Empire because it was my first Star Wars movie. I saw this first, then I saw Jedi, and then I went back and I saw A New Hope. So A New Hope to me was almost like watching a prequel. And growing up as a little kid, A New Hope always felt like the boring one. Empire was this interesting, fascinating one that gripped me, and Jedi was kind of like the fun one. You know, Ewoks and battles and all that. And it was a conclusion. I understand why people feel so let down by this. And in my processing of this movie, because like after I walked out of there, I was just like, wow, like, oh my gosh. And like that whole day, because I saw it early in the day, that the rest of that evening, I was just processing it and thinking about things. And every so often, I'm like literally doing the dishes, and I would stop and tell my wife, like, because I had to talk to somebody about it. Like something would come to my head. And all day Saturday, it was the same thing. Then I saw it again on Saturday, and that was like, it was late. So I literally came home, went to bed, and kind of processed. And I'm still processing this movie and listening to the cons and the pros that people are online are saying about this, and reading some of the things now that the movie's out, now Rian Johnson can like speak more openly about it. I understand, or I feel like I understand why there's such a split between people that really like this and people that didn't like it. And I'm talking about Star Wars fans.
I think there's different reasons too. I don't think that everyone doesn't like it for like the same reasons, or
Right.
like, you know.
But I think as Star Wars fans, I think there's this idea, and granted, somebody wrote an article on Geek Tyrant today that said, will Star Wars fans ever be 100% satisfied with any Star Wars movie that comes out? And obviously that's no. That's never going to happen. We no Star Wars movie is ever going to live up to the ones that we kind of fictitiously have in our minds and in our hearts. And we have such this is like a weird phenomenon that's occurred where we are emotionally connected to the original trilogy, or even people that grew up with the prequels, and they think that the prequels are amazing, and they don't know, like everybody else is crazy thinking that the prequels are horrible, because I love the prequels. Well, we grew up with the original trilogy, and to us these are like works of art. These are classics. But the way I think about it, and the way I look at this movie is, and we're going to get into what we liked, but this is how I feel. Like after A New Hope and Star Wars came out and it changed everything, Empire Strikes Back came out and it received poor reviews from the critics, and it was vastly different than New Hope. Like it took Star Wars in a completely different direction that was just so, it was darker, it was edgier, it was grittier, there was, you know, different, a lot of themes happening. It was amazing. It was great. It had its flaws. I mean, to this day, I mean, you can nitpick it. I mean, like how much time did Luke spend on Dagobah? Like how many days does this movie take place in? Like how did he, you know, do all this so fast? There's so many things that we can nitpick about Empire, but overall, it was such a great movie to Star Wars fans. But it was so different than New Hope. It was completely different. And there's people at that time that did not like it.
Right. Yeah.
And over time, it became this classic, this staple of Star Wars. And I just feel like this movie, and I wrote it in my notes, this is the Star Wars movie that we needed. But maybe it's not the Star Wars movie that we wanted, but it's the Star Wars movie that we needed.
Well, I got to give it to Rian Johnson. He went bold. He went bold. There were missteps along the way. Like you said, no film is perfect. But I gotta give it to him for not sticking to formula, for thinking out of the box.
And he did. I mean, there's a lot of paying homages to the original
Oh yeah,
trilogy
yeah.
in there.
Sure.
There's a lot of formulaic things in there in the story structure, but overall, like he did something that took guts, and he also did something that business wise. I mean, for Disney, you need to take Star Wars in this direction. Otherwise, we're just going to be making rehashes of other Star Wars movies over and over again, just to satisfy people and just to make money. I mean, that would be the easy way to keep Star Wars alive, is to just keep cranking out the same Star Wars that we like in different ways. You
I
know,
mean, you saying all this from the very from the first showing at the end of it. I knew to give myself space, and because I know that I'm gonna need that processing time mulling over. It's kind of like, in some ways, it's kind of like a good book, that where in a book you have time
mhm.
to go at your own pace and wrestle with different passages. You know, film is a different medium. It happens in the span of an hour or two or three, and it just that's what you have. But you can still wrestle with it and with its themes and whatever occurred, and I knew that I needed that time, and I still do. I mean, if honestly, if we had this conversation yesterday, this would be going different already. It would have been going different because I was still like livid about certain things.
Okay, so
I, I've
do you
I've calmed down,
have you
and I'm
come?
actually before we, I just want to say that, like, whatever I'm saying now, I have a real big feeling will change within my next viewing and within months from now. You know what I mean? And by the time episode 9 comes around, and episode 9 is going to influence everything else before that. You know what I mean? So I know this is what I'm still wrestling with now.
Do you think that you've kind of like have quote unquote calmed down just naturally over like because of time from when you last saw it, or have you read things that have kind of made you go, okay, okay, I kind of understand that, like I kind of get that.
I think I both. I mean, I don't want to give credit just to like time, passage of time, and like I have on my own, like, writing all those words, and like just thought comes to mind, I'll just put it in my notes app, and that helps. You know what I mean? And then I've listened to a few podcasts too, and heard points from both sides, and that have helped, like, bring about a different perspective. And listen, like like Obi-Wan, and a different point of view, a certain point of view. Like I respect that, and I'm open in life, to hear different perspectives and let that influence the way I see things. Not that I can't have my own opinion, but there's people that are wiser than me. There's people that may just see things differently and can open my eyes to things, and I allow for that to some extent, and that's what's happened, I think, in the last few days too.
All right, so let's jump into it. Let's dive into it. Now we made some predictions, and you sent me like a flow chart with some like previewing, post viewing predictions and things that we had talked about, and I think we got some stuff. You got some stuff right.
Yeah.
We were completely off on other things, but that's because I think everyone in a way was kind of like this movie. The one thing I have to say that is just an amazing thing about this movie, and you have to admit, is that this movie kept us guessing.
Oh my gosh. I had no idea who was gonna live or who was gonna die.
Yes, and I think
Anyone could have gone.
that was, I think, a great thing about this movie, that
Except for Ray.
this movie made you stop thinking that you knew what you were expecting. I think with the Force Awakens, I think what was so magical about it too, and why it was such a positive response from the fans, even though like when you really get down to it, yeah, you can make complaints that it was kind of very repetitive. It was like almost like a soft reboot in a way. But like we've said in the previous talks, that we needed that. Star Wars needed that reinvigoration, that reintroduction to the masses, and it needed that to use that formula with those ingredients so it can taste like Star Wars. And I think this movie, we were not expecting that. This is like a completely new flavor, and it had some hints of what we knew. And you know what? I'll put it this way. This thought came to me. Um, I feel like this movie was, Force Awakens was like your grandma's food. Your grandma she spoils you. She gives you what you want. She gives you sweets when you shouldn't be eating sweets. She gives you all the things that you don't really need, but she gives it to you because she loves you. And that's what The Force Awakens was. This movie was like mom's food. This movie was like, this is good for you. You need this, and one day you're gonna appreciate it. And but anyway, but let's dive right in. We talked about how weird it was gonna be that this movie takes place immediately after the events of The Force Awakens,
It
and
worked.
I had a hard time with it, thinking about it, but in execution, yeah, you're right, it worked. The I think we were right. I mean, I said the crawl had to do something, had to basically say, this is what has happened in the meantime, even though we're talking about minutes or hours, but this is what's going on. And then we jumped right into the story, and keeping with the formula of Star Wars movies, starting off with the bad guys doing something, followed by some kind of altercation, and then we jump into the main thrust of the story, and we saw that there, and I think it was executed brilliantly. I think everything in this movie, with the exception of maybe a few things that we'll get to, everything in this movie for the most part made sense sequentially. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
Like
yeah,
they
yeah,
needed
yeah.
to escape. First Order knew that they were there. They needed to get out of there. They're outgunned. And so there were some interesting things in there. I think the crawl read pretty well. The second time I read it, I was like, okay, I got it. I think it didn't have there was anything off about it. I think it still worked, the way it was written, and that action in the beginning was great. I mean,
I was on the edge of my seat even the second time. I was like, "This is exciting. This
and,
is fun."
and
I mean,
and it was different. I mean, there's a scene in that battle when that bomber, who's the sister of Rose, she gets knocked out, and it cuts, like fades to black, and then it fades back in, and it's still on her. And we've never seen that in a Star Wars movie.
I mean, the film style, the filming style was very different, and it was jarring to me at times. It took away from the feeling. It was almost like Rogue One in some sense. Like it was
Right.
just different style, and for some that's one thing that I really appreciated, but also bothered me. For some reason, it didn't feel like Star Wars. Like
Yeah.
I didn't see the wipes. I mean,
But they
or
were still in there. I think it was a good cross between the two. It was almost like saying, listen, you like the wipes. We're gonna give you some wipes. All right. But you gotta give us some change here. This movie was like a negotiation with fans. It was like, listen, we're giving you Luke Skywalker, we're giving you lightsabers, we're giving you a big baddie, we're giving you the Millennium Falcon, we're giving you the Millennium Falcon theme from A New Hope when the TIE fighters are coming and Luke and Han are in the battle in the guns. We're gonna give you some of that music.
that was
Yeah,
incredible.
it was the escape from Death Star. We're gonna give you all these little things that you like, but you have to be willing to be flexible on this other stuff. And I think that's what this movie was like. Ryan Johnson, like, really like arm wrestling with us, trying to get us to change. I think this movie is about change. It's about how things stay the same, but things also need to change. Kylo Ren is right in saying, I mean, not right, but the theme of this movie is letting the past die you know, killing it if you have to. I mean, that it's about moving forward. You know, Kylo Ren is about death and change, but it's really about moving forward, not really killing the
Well,
past.
okay.
It's about
I think
moving
I
it.
think the movie's more about moving forwards, like in different ways. So actually, I think Kylo Ren is saying "let the past die," meaning it doesn't matter. But Yoda, he's saying even your mistakes can be your teacher, but
Right.
still move forward. You know what I
Right.
mean?
Right. So, um, things that you liked about just the beginning of the movie.
Just the beginning.
Yeah. Just
I
moving
mean
through
that
the
opening.
movie. I mean, things that like, things you can point out.
Yeah, that scene with Poe. Okay, now and even the jokes between Poe and Hux,
Hux.
and it's like I'm holding for General Hux. Like I know, like that can go both ways. Just people that didn't like that. For whatever reason, it worked for me.
I liked it. I liked it. I think it was one of those things where I think they took it a little bit too far with like the wait like have a message from your mother at the end, like he says, like
Yeah,
that was almost like the ultimate
that.
punchline. But I think that's when it took the joke a little bit too far.
Yeah,
And
yeah,
General Hux, for some reason, I wrote this down in my notes. He seemed like he was playing a little bit more of a caricature of that same character. It's like it was a little bit too British, too sniffly British, like too I don't know, like
he was self-aware. He was self-aware. And in The Force Awakens, he was more like this is crazy young Nazi guy.
Mhm.
In this one, you could tell the actor himself was self-aware of what he was
Yeah,
doing.
the first time,
You know?
Force Awakens, he was just a overzealous, just sold out evil guy. And this one, it was playing it up, almost like mustache twirling.
Yeah.
Um, Poe
So
was
yeah, so
funny, but and
that op-
I
that
think you
op-
need that type of humor in there.
yeah, so that opening was exciting. I got over the whole like bombers in space thing working. It was you could nitpick that, um, but it worked for me. It worked for me because that it was really moving actually. When Rose's sister Paige, when she sacrifices herself, and does that act, it was it like, I was almost brought to tears.
Yeah,
Like wow,
and
like the sacrifice. You know what I mean? Like
there might be something too. There might be something too about those necklaces that they share with the half moon.
oh, of course,
You
it's
know,
all about the balance.
I think that that's somehow going to tie in something in the next movie. We're going to learn something more because I think that the one of the big takeaways from this movie is that in the galaxy, people are aware of the Force. They're aware of this. It's not just some ancient religion, which it is, but it's also something that maybe some people believe in, some people still hold on to as a faith system, not just a power thing.
It could be. I don't know if that will come back, the medallion thing. But what it was, it looked very similar to the yin and yang symbol,
Hmm.
and which is a symbol of balance, which is something a real one of the themes of this movie and Star Wars in general.
Yeah. Other comedy moments was Finn waking up, and instead of being in a bantha tank, he's like wearing a bantha suit,
Yeah,
and it's
yeah.
leaking water and stuff. I mean, uh, that was very not Star Wars. That felt a little bit almost prequelish to me. That little joke with him walking around
Yeah.
with the suit on or whatever.
I actually didn't like that. I didn't appreciate that. In fact, I have a big problem with Finn altogether.
Well, I told you in the
Not
last video
not
my
the
problems with
actor.
Finn, and I think in
Yeah.
this movie, he was given a mission, something to do in this movie that in reality you almost didn't even need. And it kind of made me think, like, imagine if a lot of the things that happen in this movie were kind of merged into The Force Awakens. Because it almost feels like The Force Awakens was like a prelude to this movie. Force Awakens basically introduced us to Star Wars and to these characters, and then this movie feels almost like what should be the first movie of this trilogy. Because it merged like it merged Empire and Jedi almost into one movie. This movie.
Well, that was one of the things that I thought Rian Johnson did well, in that everybody was afraid, oh, this is going to be a copy of Empire, and in the sense of it being a dark chapter, definitely, and definitely pay homage to Empire in a lot of different ways. A lot of Return of the Jedi in there. The throne room scene, the of the Supreme Leader, and even it's like overall, like it felt almost like it concluded. You know what I mean? There were so many endings to this film that it almost felt like a Return of the Jedi.
See, and that's the thing,
which is great because now the next movie doesn't have to stick to the Return of the Jedi formula.
Exactly, and I think that's one of the things that I feel like I understand why people are so bent out of shape about this movie, but it's all part of this moving forward, and I feel like it's just this movie needed to do this because it needed to conclude, it needed to kind of like end the idea that the original trilogy is the end all of Star Wars. And this movie kind of showed that, you know what, even that it kind of turned everything on its head. You know, it was going to be a repeat again. We were going to end up with we had another emperor. And I think that's why they don't give any information about Snoke, because I think Snoke doesn't matter ultimately. Ultimately, Snoke is just another Sith person that has risen up using fear and using his power as a tactic to stay on top. And Kylo Ren ultimately says, you know what? I'm a completely different type of bad guy. I am a monster, and I'm going to finish what Vader started. Vader ultimately wanted to destroy the Emperor and rule the galaxy himself. He in the prequels, he wanted to do it with Padme as Anakin. He's like, I can kill him. Come with me and we'll rule the galaxy and we'll make it how we want to make it. He wanted to do it then with his son in the original trilogy. The Emperor, you can destroy the Emperor. He's seen it. Let's rule the galaxy as father and son. And I think ultimately Kylo Ren wanted to finish what his father started, which was to have the Skywalker lineage on top, which Vader was never able to do.
And, you know, that's a great point. Listen, hearing you speak about it, and even my own like analysis writing about it, like on paper, this film was incredible, right? On paper. And to a lot of people viewing it, including yourself, right? This is why I'm psychoanalyzing myself, because the issue with the film, but there's also an issue with the viewer. You know, and the viewer is bringing their own thing, and depending on what you brought into this, you're going to take out certain things and feel about it in certain ways. And so that's what I'm trying to figure out, because I thought I was right along the same page with you prior to the viewing. You know what I mean? Like the way we discussed it, it seemed like viewed The Force Awakens in similar ways, and you know, and we kind of set out or spoke about our expectations, and it sounded pretty similar. But you know, as we know, like when expectations aren't met, that brings about frustrations. So I must have had in my head that really hindered the experience from being amazing. And those you bring up, I mean, I know we're talking about like the good, but since you brought up Snoke, I think that's one of the things that really bothered me in the initial viewing. Not as much in the second one. About it now, I do see how brilliant it was to just get rid of him. Now, okay, and I think what bothers me most about, or has bothered me, but most about The Last Jedi was the things that I thought The Force Awakens set up. So, you know, in the last 2 years, we've talked about so many fan theories, and that's on us. You know, Star Wars didn't ask for that itself. But in some ways, The Force Awakens did beg the question, and specific questions. Like showing Snoke, showing all the scars in his face, the music, all that. It was evoking a sense of like this guy has a history. He said he's been there for a long time, and there's evidence of that on his face. So that naturally lends itself to like, oh, what is this guy? He's so mysterious. Mystery is either getting more clues to that so you can figure it out yourself, or it being revealed in a clever way. So what happened was that did not occur at all with Snoke. There was nothing, no revelation. I mean, there's little clues in there, like the ring that he wore, you know, and certain things like that. Like I'm sure, like the visual guide has certain things, and so I'm sure there's still backstory. But you know, as a viewer, you're not getting that. So that was very dissatisfying for me.
But here's the
You know,
thing.
I
now.
really
Here's the thing. When we first saw the Emperor in Empire Strikes Back, it was literally a monkey with a woman with a crazy voice, a monkey face with a crazy voice. That was the Emperor. Then in Return of the Jedi, they hired Ian McDermott. No, not Ian McDermott. Yeah, Ian McDermott. And we see this guy with this old, disheveled face, or all these, you know, we didn't know who this guy was. All we knew he was the Emperor. We heard about the Emperor, and this is the Emperor. We didn't know his name was Palpatine. We didn't know where he was from. The prequels did this for us.
no. I agree with that, but
So,
to a certain extent, because like with the Emperor, we saw that Vader was on his leash. You know what I mean? We really saw that conflict and how he had a presence. That's the difference. The Emperor had a presence, and by that point, by Return to Jedi, see, we're not introduced to the Emperor. We hear his name spoken in A New Hope. We see the hologram in Empire, and then we finally get him in Return. So there's a payoff there. One, and two, he really had a presence, and it wasn't about him. It was about father son and that father's redemption, and that was done by the father, the villain destroying the Emperor at the very end. You know what I mean? So it had that arc. Whereas this, we just get a little bit in Force Awakens, and we're expecting, again, this is what I'm saying. Like, I'm not putting it all on the movie. I know it's on me too.
yeah.
But we're expecting that, oh, we're gonna get more of him.
I just
You know what I
think,
mean? Like,
and I see I totally see your point, and I'm surprised that I didn't have more of an issue with all these things, like finding out nothing about Snoke and then they kill him off, finding out that Rey's parents, they're nobodies, or so
that didn't bother me.
or
That
so
part.
like those things. I thought they would bother me, and they didn't. And I think that's what I feel like made this movie so brilliant. And one thing that I just wanted to throw out there before I forget is that I think for me, first of all, let me say this. I love this movie, but trust me, in my own analyzing it in my head, I I recently asked myself, wait a second, okay, this movie's getting backlash from fans. Like, am I Phantom Menacing this movie? Like, am I liking this movie so much because I want to like it? Or am I eventually going to realize that this movie was no good? And I can't see that happening. Like, this was a good movie. And the reason, now, and then my second point, the reason why I feel like it was a good movie too is that for me personally, I've watched a lot of I haven't seen every episode of Clone Wars, the animated show, but I've seen enough Clone Wars. And more recently, the Star Wars Rebels cartoon has become like one of my all-time favorite. I think that's like my favorite, like whatever you want to call it, expanded universe or whatever. Like Rogue One, I think put it on film, but Star Wars Rebels. If you're not watching Star Wars Rebels, like I think Star Wars Rebels is the reason why I think I liked this movie so much, because you see they try things that are different in Star Wars Rebels, and it still feels like Star Wars. And I think that kind of in a way prepared me for this type of story. And the fact that these movies are being put together by the same story group that works on the TV cartoons like the Star Wars Rebels and the other movies like Rogue One, I think it kind of makes me feel like I'm more accepting of how different this movie was. And granted, there's a lot of stuff, and we're going to get into it, that I didn't particularly like, and I feel like it could have been done different or better. But overall, this movie, again, maybe it's not the best Star Wars movie. To me, it's always going to be Empire. But this movie overall did a great job at um, moving the story forward and moving it in a new direction and setting up the future of Star Wars. And I think that's what a lot of fans don't like. They don't like. I feel like a lot of fans are going to starting to feel disenfranchised in a way, almost like they're getting aged out of Star Wars. Like, my Star Wars doesn't go in that direction. That's a different type of Star Wars. That's a Star Wars for this new generation that can get it. I can't get it, and I just don't agree with that. I feel like we have to let go. I mean, just like you like in the movie, in the story itself, like, you have to let go of these old ideas of what the Jedi were supposed to be, or what you got to let go of these things and move to the look to the future. Like this is a new this is a new time. This is a new era of Star Wars, and that, I feel, I left the theater the first time kind of excited about that. Even though I didn't particularly like the way this movie ended. I mean, I feel like and I'm jumping ahead here, but I feel like the ending should have been that shot of them on the Millennium Falcon as a group. Like, that felt more like the end of a Star Wars movie. Boom, right there, Ryan Johnson. Right after that, but then it kind of gave you like another ending with the little,
like an epilogue,
the Force with the broom and all that. And I think they did that because I feel like I kind of understand why they would do that. It's just kind of set up the idea that um, that almost felt like they were yelling at us, saying, "This is Star Wars for a new generation. See, kids." you know.
See, actually, I didn't get that. And the second viewing, I appreciated it. The first viewing, I was like, huh, that's interesting. Second viewing, I saw it as, well, I appreciate it and I didn't appreciate it. My perspective, again, has changed dramatically in a few days. But part of me, the jaded part of me, was like, what is this? Is he trying to set up, is this the trilogy he's trying to set up? You know what I mean? The other part of me was like, I felt like he was deconstructing the myth of Luke and saying how, making a statement about how throughout the, and he does this, about like hero worship and how heroes are flawed and not perfect, and like Yoda said, can make mistakes and learn from them. But then I felt like he's going back on that message by making Luke myth again with these kids. So I'm still wrestling with that, but the way I see it is that these kids are, the spark was lit. That makes sense?
Mhm.
Like, the spark that was spoken about throughout the film was lit when Master Jedi came with his laser sword and took on the First Order. You know what I mean? And now these kids who have been inspired by these rebels, or now have heard of Luke's victory, and they're gonna be that awakened, the force that's awakened in them. They're gonna be that new generation.
And
So I like that. I respect that.
And the thing is, what I think is cool about that too, which is why I like it as well, is that when you think about A New Hope, think about that message that Princess Leia sent in R2D2 to Obi-Wan Kenobi. She didn't know who Obi-Wan Kenobi was. She had just heard stories about Obi-Wan Kenobi. So even though that was a dark time where people had forgotten about the Jedi, it was Princess Leia that was like that kid who had heard stories about this Obi-Wan Kenobi. Oh my gosh, this is our last hope. Obi-Wan Kenobi, you're my last hope. And Obi-Wan is like thinking to himself, man, I haven't been Obi-Wan Kenobi in a long time. And and that's why he realizes that he needs to, this is the time, it's time for Luke to, like, man, like I should have done something. maybe we'll see that in like an Obi-Wan Kenobi movie, which has been kind of rumored and kind of unofficially announced that that's going to be the next standalone. Maybe they'll explore that. That similarly to Luke having his doubts. You don't know what happened to Obi-Wan all those years in the desert, watching over Luke, thinking to himself, man, maybe struggling like, should I train this kid? Should I just take him and train him? Should I prepare him, or should I just let the Jedi die with me? And I mean, you can keep thinking about it. It's like you said, this movie is literally like, it's like a book that the more you watch it, the more we talk about it. It could get deep. It could get really deep, and I think just people's expectations, I think, is what has made the backlash happen. And I think, and I read a quick little a quick part of an interview with Ryan Johnson where he basically was saying, "Listen, I'm a huge Star Wars fan, and I totally can understand why I'm getting certain tweets that are like negative about this movie and how some people are very kind of disappointed. I can understand it, and I think he understands the idea that it's going to take time for people to accept it and to kind of and not just accept it, but like it for what it is, like it for what it's done, which I feel like I got it right away, which is this movie is setting up Star Wars beyond Star Wars
Well, and
future.
if it is, I don't doubt that it's a good film. It can't get like 94% critical reviews and it not be a solid film. But in some ways, I feel I'm kind of looking forward to getting there. I feel like it's challenging me and it's making me do the work and making me do the work, me appreciate it even more. You know what I mean?
Well, let's
Like,
get into it. Let's do some work. Let's do some digging. We can talk about what we liked and we didn't like together, so we can kind of go through this. But what did you think about the whole Finn and Rose subplot? That was like story B. I'll tell you
yeah,
right
yeah.
now, I didn't particularly like it, but I understand why it was needed.
Well, yeah, I think that's the biggest misstep. And I think that's pretty unanimous among those who liked and disliked it. Um, and you mentioned it before, Finn has the same arc, and that's
Yeah,
sad. Like,
yeah.
that's unfortunate. He could have really grown. I like them in Force Awakens. I know people that didn't, but I did, and I liked his chemistry with Rey. Um, and I think this is how I see Ryan Johnson, writer director, as putting that in for a few reasons. One, he he wanted to show that 1% that's contributing and profiting from war, from the good and the bad, and that's kind of like taking like real world kind of situations and putting it in Star Wars, which people will have issues with. I don't mind that so much if it's not heavy handed.
Yeah, I feel like the whole Canto Bite little adventure with those horse creatures and all this stuff, like the wraithers or something like that, I think it's called. Uh, I feel like that was kind of like the Rathtars scene
Yeah, yeah,
in the
and
Force
I just thought
Awakens, where
that's
it didn't really do anything to the main plot, but it was kind of just like a little like like a filler adventure. Like if the Last Jedi was like a season of a show, that was like the filler episode, like side story that doesn't really have to do too much about with the main story. I think my biggest problem with this whole thing, I'm sorry, with the whole I mean, the Finn Rose thing, I think was created so that we can kind of I think they might have changed their mind on the idea that Finn has like this kind of like crush on Ray, and will they, won't they? And I think they needed to kind of nip that in the bud, because I think if Ray is to be the main thrust of this new trilogy, like I don't think a romantic thing is necessary in her story, and I think they wanted Finn to kind of have this other character that he can gravitate towards, and we can develop something there. And I think this whole adventure was kind of created almost as a vehicle for them to have this history together, which then pays off when she saves him when he's about to commit, his kamikaze style into that beam on, you know, on what's the name of that island?
Great.
Crate. And but I think it still didn't. It still kind of fell a little flat to me because ultimately, what they did by going to Canto Bight, trying to get the master decoder or whatever, and failing, and then getting caught on Snoke's ship, and then because of that, when you think about it, they're responsible for all the deaths of the resistance that were escaping on the smaller ships. Because if they hadn't done this whole mission, that guy DJ, but played by Benicio del Toro, wouldn't have spilled the beans about that whole thing.
Right. Sorry. Side note: I did not like DJ.
I did not like him. That was the biggest. I think that's the biggest disappointment in this movie.
He reminded me of. Have you seen what's that movie? Verbal Kent. He plays this guy named Fenster in that movie. But what I'm trying to say is that Benicio del Toro played like the same character he's playing in a different movie. I kept seeing that. It was annoying.
Yeah, like I feel like this was like he just decided to do this.
Usual Suspects. That's what it is.
Usual Suspects. Yeah, he decided to do this. He decided to play it like this, and I feel like nobody had the guts to tell him, no, you're not playing it like this. Because he's Benicio del Toro. I mean,
that's not the biggest problem for me because this whole movie is about failing. Luke failed. Leia failed in that no one came to her distress. Everybody failed. You know what I mean? Rey failed to get Luke to work with her. I mean, so this movie is constantly like hitting us over the head about failure. So that's not the biggest issue with me. I think it's the execution of that. I think it was hitting us over the head with like the whole war profiteering and then like the animal cruelty and it just wasn't as interesting. You know what I mean? I wanted to go back to the island where they were training. I wanted to be somewhere else. I actually liked the character of Rose. I didn't mind her, but she didn't have any chemistry with John Boyega. I didn't feel that chemistry at all. And then that kiss after she saves him felt really awkward. It did not land with me at all.
Yeah.
And the other thing of that plot also was a lesson for Poe and in leadership. You know what I mean? Like that. And I mean that all came together for that reason. And that was the one. Coming out of the movie, my first initial impression, that was the one character that I really liked, his arc. How he went from hotshot pilot who was really reckless, and because of him, they lost all these bombers, lost so much. It was a stupid move by him, to someone who's now taking steps to actually be a leader.
Yeah, yeah.
And I appreciate that from the first viewing. I did not like Holdo and how I feel like I did like that kamikaze scene from her, the light speed. That was an amazing
I heard,
scene.
You know, somebody said in one of the things one of the reviews, they were like, "Why don't they just do that all the time? Like, blow up a Death Star, just fly a spaceship in hyperspace through the Death Star, done." You know.
You know who should have done that? Akbar should have done that.
Yeah, you know, the Laura Dern's character that was played very well because Laura Dern is an amazing actress. Great character, really poor execution, and really kind of they dropped the ball with that character. I thought that was going to be the character that was going to be the new Princess Leia in the next movie. That was going to carry the mantle of the strong, seasoned veteran, wise woman like the Mon Mothma, the Princess Leia in this, and kind of like carry it into the next. And so to have her be the character that, is her whole arc, she comes off as suspicious and not making good decisions and not a good leader. And then we find out that she was being a good leader, and it was just that she didn't know who she could trust, and that's why she didn't share that plan.
Wait, is that why? Because she didn't know who to trust?
I believe so, because, I mean, if they were tracked through hyperspace, their thought was, we have a mole on this ship. You know?
Yeah, I mean, I don't. I don't.
And she's not going to trust Poe because Poe makes all these like just made a horrible decision and killed a bunch of people in the opening battle. I just feel like I think you're right. I think it would have been cool, really cool, if it was Akbar that sacrificed himself, or if it was Leia, and that's how Leia's story ends with her sacrificing herself in that sense.
Yeah. Look, okay. Look, speaking of Akbar, let me just get this out of the way, because I think initially this is what bothered me most about the film. I felt like Akbar was unceremoniously killed off. You know what I mean? I did not. I still don't appreciate that. I don't think as many times as I see the film, I'm going to appreciate that. And that's what I felt about a lot of what Ryan Johnson did with the characters. Now, and that's that he didn't. They were treated irreverently. I felt that about a lot of the characters. I felt that especially about Luke as well. Phasma, I don't even know why she was in the film. It kind of annoys me.
I think with Phasma, I think she survives.
No. Well,
I think this is like going to be this ongoing thing where
joke.
it's like almost like where she thinks she's a goner and she freaking still survives it. Like so I wouldn't be surprised if you see her again.
Well, we did see that her like armor can like deflect.
Well, I mean, her armor is literally made from like remember in the prequels the Naboo ship that was like super shiny. Her armor is supposedly forged from that metal.
Wasn't it like Palpatine's
from like
yacht?
Palpatine's yacht or something like that? Yeah. Which is made from that Naboo metal or whatever. But anyway.
Well, okay. So
your point, like I really wish they would have given Akbar a better send off, especially since the actor who does the voice passed away. Yeah, that would have been nice.
But it's not just Akbar. It was like my initial feeling was that it was all these characters were treated irreverently, and
even characters we didn't know, because I mean, obviously the toys came out already, and I'm a big toy guy, so I see a lot of these action figures, and the action figure for the A-wing pilot who dies in the hangar.
I did not like that either.
She dies in the hangar in her A-wing. There's an action figure for her. She comes with the A-wing. I mean, the Paige, Rose's sister, there's an action figure for her. And I remember thinking like, oh, I wonder what this character is. And I mean, like, you make an action figure for this person and they don't exist anymore. They're gone.
Well, I mean, that's a little nitpick, I think, maybe. Like I would have liked that A-wing pilot to continue on. You know what I mean? Like have some background actors like still throughout the trilogy.
There's one actor from The Force Awakens that you don't even see in this one, who was in the battle in Force Awakens, and he's that actor. I forgot his name. He was in
right. He's in all of Abrams' films.
Yeah.
Right. But okay, so but it's and even like Leia, like I didn't like the fact that she went into a coma. I still don't understand that. Maybe I eventually will, but I didn't understand that, and I did not like.
She doesn't use the Force that often, so I mean that was her using the Force, and it kind of wiped her out.
Well, I didn't even like. I still don't like the fact that she used the Force in that way. Like this is the one time that we see her use the Force, aside from like feeling someone's presence, and it was like this amazing Peter Pan, like Mary Poppins flying in space when she should have died.
Yeah, but see, that's the thing. Like with that, I think there's a precedent for that, because there's something similar to that happened in Star Wars Rebels and and in the Clone Wars. So and I get precedent for it, and it's just precedent.
There's a precedent of that, but we didn't see Leia do anything before, and the one time we do use it, we see her use it for herself to come back. Like I would have, if she was going to do something like that, do some of that like as either her sacrificing herself for someone or saving someone's life, something meaningful that way for me, but not just like floating out in space. Like I just don't understand that. And then lastly, just to get the part out of the way, it was my big problem initially with Luke. Now I'm starting again, in all seriousness, the stages of grief, and I think it was because, and I think this is something that Ryan Johnson did that was pretty brilliant, and I'm wrestling with still. But I didn't feel like Luke doing what he did to Ben Solo was within his character. I felt it was really out of character. He wouldn't have done that, and I felt that was treated disrespectfully, and I felt like he was just this grumpy old man the whole time. This is not the person I expected. You know what I mean? And that really bothered me.
See,
I'm starting to.
I think the reason,
I'm starting to come around.
but I think the reason, because I can see that. See, that's the thing. I can understand and I can appreciate that. And at least for me, I feel like that disappointment stems from the fact that we as fans that maybe don't read the books or anything like that, we missed out on all these incredible adventures that Luke must have had between Return of the Jedi and The Force Awakens. You know, we had the expanded universe novels that are not canon anymore. You know, I mean, in the expanded universe, she marries Mara Jade, who was a former assassin from, you know, Palpatine. I mean, there's a clone of Palpatine. We have these amazing expanded universe stories of Luke, and now that's all that stuff is being rewritten, and but we missed out on that. We missed out on maybe George Lucas having, you know, maybe George Lucas would have done this trilogy if he had the technology and the just tenaciousness to actually.
And I think that's what I was grieving. I was grieving what you're saying. I didn't get to see the Luke that I always wanted to see after Return of the Jedi. The one that I imagined as a kid, like, oh, now that he's a Jedi, like, what is he doing? What adventures he's going? Like, he must be super amazing. And then we never get to see that. All we know is that after some events of Return of the Jedi, at some point he started and he messed up. And not only did he mess up, but he messed up big time. So big, like he was about to, for a fleeting moment, he thought about killing his nephew. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm
still wrestling with that. I still feel like maybe that's a little too much, you know. But
and I think it's because I mean the movie is very meta in that way, where Luke realizes, you know, I was Luke Skywalker, the legendary Luke Skywalker, you know, and I feel like we as fans also put this movie is making so many statements, and this movie is really saying to the fans, don't put all these people on pedestals, because at the end of the day they're just characters. They're human, you know, and they're not perfect. And I think because they're not perfect, there is no perfect Star Wars. And I think as fans, even though we know that here, we don't know it here, and because of that we're looking for this, like this Star Wars movie that we're going to walk out of and say, yes, this is it. As much as I love The Force Awakens, rewatching it before we saw the Last Jedi, I enjoyed it. I think it was a good Star Wars movie, but I think I enjoyed The Last Jedi a lot more because of how new and fresh. I mean, you texted me and you said, you know, a couple days ago, you said, what did you think of The Last Jedi? Don't tell me anything, just use one word. And my response was fresh, because I feel like this is a fresh start. This is a fresh take. This is just this felt new, and not new in a bad way, because I feel like with the prequels, that was a new Star Wars. The prequels are just completely a different version of Star Wars altogether, but they were not fresh. They were just so different and so out of left, and so just there's just something different. I can't really put my finger on it. People smarter than me have reviewed those movies to death, and they can probably put a better stamp on it than me. But those didn't fully feel like Star Wars, even though I acknowledge that they are Star Wars movies. The original trilogy was my Star Wars because it's tied to my childhood. It's tied to my emotions. It's tied to all those things. All those strings are attached to them. This is Star Wars 2, and I think we need to come to that. We need to come to grips with that. This is Star Wars, and this is the future of Star Wars. I heard somebody say, somebody complained and said, "Oh, well, I guess Star Wars is now like the James Bond movies, where they're all going to be different and they're all going to be for, you know, well, Sean Connery is my James Bond. Oh no, Roger Moore is my James Bond, and they're just different eras of the same story. And
Timothy Dalton is no one's James Bond.
no, he's angry. He's the grumpy James Bond. He's so angry in those movies. We should do a James Bond show talk, James Bond talk. But I just feel I don't believe that, because I just feel like this is every Star Wars is for everybody. It's just we put the barriers. We put the barriers, and some people kind of fold their arms and say, well, you know what, whatever. I guess this is Star Wars, not for me. That's fine. I don't care. But you should care, because it's still a good story. It's still adventure. It's still fantasy. It still has, there's still things to learn from it. And I think so. I think it's good for everyone. We need to really. I feel like we need to just get over ourselves and our expectations of what Star Wars should be, and realize that no, Disney is not killing your childhood. Disney is not ruining it. Like, this is an adventure. This is fantasy adventure at its and it's something that we loved, and it's something that's different now, but it's different in a good way. And I think it's just going to take time for people just to come to realize that. And I think we've been talking about the outside of this movie, and we haven't really touched on some of the inside intricacies of this movie.
Well, we're gonna have to wrap up now. We're gonna have to wait for part 2, but let's finish with it. Let's wrap up with like our favorite moments. Let's end on a good note. And I want to start by saying, after me getting over the shock that Snoke died the way he did, and viewing it a second time, I really loved that entire sequence. Like, the entire sequence was phenomenal, and with all the red in that room, once that happens and they're fighting the guards, I was like riveted.
That has to be probably the best Star Wars lightsaber sequence in all of the movies.
Well, okay, wait. What's funny is that this is the only Star Wars film besides Rogue One that there was not a lightsaber on lightsaber battle.
Right. That's true. That's true.
But even still, that sequence was incredible. And when my two favorite things were when Rey drops the lightsaber and picks it up again, and then also when she throws it at Kylo Ren and he turns it on. Right in the guy's.
He just taps the button. He just on and off.
Yeah.
that was great. That was great. That whole sequence was, because you didn't know what to expect. You didn't know anything about Snoke, and I think that's what's so genius about it. That now maybe one day we'll find out through the grapevine that maybe they had plans for Snoke, and then they completely changed their mind. I read that Rian Johnson basically tore up the treatment that Lawrence Kasdan had written for Episode 8, kind of an outline, and Ryan decided to go his own way. I also read somewhere that there were a lot of elements of this movie are elements that were originally kind of idea points that George Lucas had wanted for Episode 7. So one day maybe we'll find out all this stuff, but the way it stands right now, I think it's genius that you give us this bad guy, this new emperor type character, and we already have this idea of like, oh, I know where this is going. Oh, here we go. This is the new emperor. This is some guy. He's a Sith Lord. Let's see what he is. And then you basically say, no, we're going to take this a different way. And Kylo Ren does what Vader could never do. And like I said before, and he kills him. So it's like now it's like the sky's the limit. This next movie could be about literally anything.
That's true. Although I have a feeling. Okay, so one more point that I really love. I really liked the interaction between Kylo Ren and Rey.
Yes, I was going to ask you about that. What did you think about that?
Oh my! That's the strongest element of the whole film, I think.
Just from a filmmaking perspective, I think that was so. There's no special effects there. I mean, they're obviously shot separately.
Well, the sound effects.
Yeah, the sound effects. But that was just so good, and it's such an interesting way of using the Force and connecting Now we find out later that Snoke was the one that connected their minds, I guess.
What I love about that is that, okay, so she goes into the cave, right? And we can talk about the cave in the part 2 segment. But I love that it goes like she's narrating what's happened to Kylo Ren, the one that she thinks is a monster, right? Initially. But she's doing that in a very vulnerable way. You know what I mean? Very intimate way. Like,
Because she tried to taste the dark side, and she realized that the light side isn't satisfying, and that the dark side isn't satisfying. And Kylo Ren, I think, has already gone through that. I think Kylo Ren has realized that, forget about the Sith, forget about the Jedi. Like, neither of these things are working for me. And I think that's what's so interesting. And there was all these rumors leading up to this movie about, well, maybe Luke is like the gray Jedi. Maybe this is like the gray, Luke the Gray or whatever. And I think this totally just flipped everything on its head. And what's so interesting about that is that, see, I believe that Kylo Ren is still redeemable, because if he is fully bad now, then Han Solo's death was in vain. You kill off this major character in The Force Awakens, what? So that Kylo Ren could prove himself to Snoke, just so that he can then later on get close enough to him to kill him. I mean, okay, you can make that argument, but I think there's still a conflict in him, because he's not Jedi nor Sith. So he doesn't
yeah,
have that loyalty to either side.
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know if he can be redeemed. I mean, I think he can be redeemed, but I don't know if they'll do that.
Well,
No.
Luke tells Leia. I mean, Leia says, tells him, I know now that I've lost him forever. And Luke says, no one's ever really gone forever. No one's ever really gone. And that's when she gives her the dice.
Well, before that, he says, so it's interesting. He says, I can't save him. Then she says, I know I've lost him. And then he responds, like, no one's ever lost forever. So it's like, okay, maybe I can't save him, but maybe he can't be saved
or
by someone else
exactly,
or something.
Exactly.
But some predictions real quick for episode 9. I feel like maybe Kylo Ren will die and not be redeemed, and that would be a real big twist, because we've seen the redemption of the Darth Vader, and thinking, okay, maybe this is the path redeemed. I'm wondering if Rey from nowhere. That was funny. Okay, Jakku. All right, that is nowhere. I wonder what if, like, because this is the story of the Skywalker lineage, right? She being from nowhere, Rey, Kylo Ren dying. What if Rey maybe not even know her last name? What if she takes on the mantle? She takes on being a Skywalker at the very end.
That's interesting.
You know what I mean? Yeah. Like I'll take on the name Skywalker, even though it may not be related.
Right, it's a mantle so that the legacy can live on.
Right, you know what I mean? That'd be interesting.
That's an interesting theory. It might not happen at all, because you know what? These are just theories that we come up with, and as we found out from this movie, that means absolutely nothing. They mean absolutely nothing, because the story is going to go the way it needs to go.
Well, okay. Again, just getting back to the things that we loved. I like, just to sum up. Yes, the Rey and Kylo Ren thing was the strongest for me. Was the strongest thing, and I like that, because it sets a real great dynamic in the next film. Ready?
There's definitely a connection between the two of them. And even though they're different, there's also a lot of similarities in them. And it's all about choice. Rey is choosing the light side, and Kylo Ren is choosing the dark side. One is choosing the light side for the greater good. The other one is choosing the dark side for his own personal thing.
And one thing that we haven't seen, I don't think, is this intimacy and affection that I got from this film, from them. You know what I mean? Now, I'm not saying like affection in the sense of like romantic. It could be, but like there's there's an empathy of sorts.
I think this movie kind of this what happens in this movie has connected them in a way that they are like the yin and yang, going back to the little medallions that Rose and her sister Paige had.
Yeah.
You know, they've become now like the crux of the story. Like they are the yin and the yang. We'll be just to move on so we can wrap up here. The other thing, I love that was, I think, a great part of the story, and kind of like Luke talking about the prequels was great. Him saying how, like, look at what
Yeah.
happened in the guys, look what happened in the prequels, because we knew this, but there's never been like an admittance, like an admission of guilt
Yeah.
about this aspect of the prequels, that the Jedi really failed. Yoda never admits it. Obi-Wan never admits it. It was always like, well, you know, Vader turned bad. He chose the dark side, and it was like the Jedi failed, and it was great to finally get that, you know, admission of guilt from somebody who was who wasn't there. You know, Luke. He's a product of it.
Yeah.
The other thing that I thought was amazing, and I can't believe you haven't mentioned it yet, was Yoda.
Well, actually, I've mentioned it like 3 or 4 times. I keep coming back to him, the lesson that he's taught. You know what I mean?
Well, yeah, no, the lessons, but I mean, just that scene.
Yeah.
Having Yoda appear. Now, I'll admit that the puppet looked a little off, but I actually read that they got the original cast of the puppet, and they actually found the original person that painted the eyes for the original puppet to come work on this puppet.
Huh.
And Frank Oz actually performed the puppeteering himself, just like they did in Empire. So I mean, I kind of chalk it up to the fact that it's because it's a new puppet, and maybe the way that things are designed nowadays.
Yoda has only truly worked in the setting of Dagobah.
Yeah, you're right.
You know what I mean? Like, that first shot of him, it was a little jarring, but then I got used to it, and it didn't really bother me after that.
I like that it was a puppet, because it if it would have been like the CG Yoda, it would have been too distracting. I like the fact that it was a puppet because the way he moved, and like when he giggles because he's laughing at Luke, because you know, and I totally missed the first time, you know, he says, you know, Rey has all that she needs.
I got that, but I didn't understand that he meant that she had the books.
She had the books. And even when I saw in the first viewing, I saw like when Finn opens the drawer in the Millennium Falcon, and there's like these weird books, and he grabs
I missed that
blanket. I saw it, but it didn't occur to me that those were the books until the second viewing. That then I was like, wait a second, were those the books? And then surely enough, like I'm listening to somebody else review the movie, and I hear that. And I'm like, of course. And then Yoda, it all kind of came together. Like, oh, and Yoda did say that. So I thought that was really cool. That even as a Force ghost, Yoda still has a sense of humor.
I'll end my my favorite moments with these two moments. One, R2, when Luke goes into the Falcon, and R2 is there, and they're interacting. He's like, R2, and he's like, I wish I could make you understand. And then R2 does the hologram of Leia from.
That was great.
What do you hope? I got a little choked up. I'm not gonna lie. Oh my gosh. I'm a sucker for nostalgia.
This is what I'm telling you. This movie is so aware of itself in a good way. It's so meta, but in a good way. Like, I feel like this movie on so many levels is like the characters in the movie are almost like, in the way that the story is progressing, they are telling us, guys, it's okay. Like, you know, that, you know, I mean, that scene when Luke says, I wish I could make you understand. I mean, it's, and to see that hologram again, it's to say, this is the reason, this is what started it all, and you need to end it because we need to move the story forward. We need to move forward. And I think Luke was stuck in the past with his failures, stuck in the past. And I feel like, you know, as fans, we've been stuck in the past because we want a great Star Wars movie because we were burnt before. You know, the prequels came before these. You know, even though in the timeline they don't, but we were burnt, and
Yeah.
I think we need to move forward. I love that shot of him in the Falcon. I never really noticed in the original trilogy, even though I know that they're there. I never noticed the little dice in the Millennium Falcon. I gotta
I
go
only
rewatch
noticed it
them
in A New
and see if
Hope.
I can pause it to see it. But I never really noticed it. But I know that they're there because I've read that those were put there on purpose, and
I definitely.
I'm pretty sure those dice are going to play a part in the Han Solo movie.
Yep, that's what I was just gonna say. You
I'm
beat me
pretty
to it.
sure.
No, yeah, it
Um,
definitely will be in there.
oh, another thing I read, sorry, is when they talk about the First Order tracking them through hyperspace. I just recently saw an article on Geek Tyrant that was amazing because they basically pointed out that in Rogue One, when I forgot these characters already. In Rogue One, when what's this
Jin,
girl's name? Uh,
Jin,
Jin,
Urso.
yes, Jin, and what's this guy? Oh my gosh, I'm forgetting all these characters already. This is how I'm in Last Jedi mode.
Well, yeah, I know what you're talking
When
about.
they're going through the database
Yeah,
and they're trying to look for the Death Star plans,
yeah,
and she's reading off certain things. One of the things
right.
that she says is um, hyperspace tracking or something like that,
Really?
as one of the things that was one of the files that was in the database. So at that time, it was some kind of prototype of that.
Huh, interesting.
So that was kind of interesting that that's in there.
Yeah.
I really enjoyed that scene, and this will be my way of ending it, so we can wrap up, and then
I have one more.
we'll jump into specifics in part two. I love that the music. I love that the John Williams score. I've been listening to it on iTunes Music, Apple Music, and the scene on Crate where the Millennium Falcon comes to the rescue and they go through the salt mines deep down, and it's the music from A New Hope when
Battle of Yavin.
it's not the Battle of Yavin.
It's not?
It's not. It's when the Millennium Falcon escapes the Death Star and those few TIE fighters start attacking it, and Han and Luke jump on the guns.
Really?
That's this music, which
Okay.
leads me to believe that this is the Millennium Falcon music when Chewie is behind the wheel.
Huh.
Because think about it, in A New Hope, Han and Luke are on the guns.
Yeah.
And Chewie was behind the wheel when this music was playing.
Yeah.
And in this movie, they played it, and Chewie's behind the wheel.
Wow. I didn't catch that. I knew it was from A New Hope, but I didn't realize it was that.
But you mentioned something earlier about the soundtrack, and I totally agree that this soundtrack is stronger because of the fact that it pays homage to a lot of the themes.
Yeah, that was not in this video. That was I think a phone call or text message that I sent you.
Yeah, so that the music and we'll get into it the next time. But the music was one of my favorite things in this movie.
It's gonna take us a while to really dissect the music because you gotta it has to grow on you. You have to do it a few times. But I'll end my piece with that. One of the things I was really looking forward to more than anything else, I really wanted to see a reunion of Luke and Leia. And Ryan delivered that, and not only that, I've mentioned in the past that my favorite of all the themes, for whatever reason, my favorite theme is Luke and Leia's theme. It's so melancholic. It's from Return of the Jedi, and it's just a beautiful blend of both Luke's theme and Leia's theme.
Yeah.
And it was really short, but it was played in Crate when they do meet, and that was a sweet scene when he kisses her on the head, and that whole section there.
Well, I mean,
was really
knowing the reality that Carrie Fisher's not with us anymore, that's what makes her performance in this movie that much more bittersweet, and that scene is in particular because it was great to see them both together, and I have a feeling that might have been like one of the last scenes that she filmed, because when you think about it, Mark Hamill, had to cut his hair and to dye the beard and to make, but we're gonna get into that because that was the one of the biggest switcheroo moments in Star Wars history.
It's so funny. Again, like I said before, like when I started this video, I'm still conflicted, and I think I'm coming around. Especially, I know I knew I needed to talk to you. Just verbalizing it out loud has helped dramatically. But even that first viewing when I just felt a little disappointed about it all, that scene blew me away. When he's like doing that projection, the power that it took. I'm like, this is the Luke that I thought I was gonna get to really see his power. You know what I mean? And yeah, that was it was pretty incredible.
And that's
Um,
the power of this movie. That's the power of this movie. And we're going to end it right there. We're going to end it right there because we've spoken for a long time. And I think we kind of touched on our initial reaction and kind of like the overall what we like, what we don't like, how we're conflicted. But I think in part two, we're going to talk more about some specifics. We're going to do a little bit more research and try to really analyze the movie in our brains because they got recorded in there. Um,
oh, I'm
and
gonna definitely see it again.
I'd like to. I don't know if I'll be able to, but I definitely replay it in my head, and especially driving in my car, listening to the soundtrack. I'm constantly replaying scenes that I remember in my head, and trying to kind of like nitpick certain things. There's a lot of nitpicks that, I mean, not a lot, but there's some nitpicks that I can't recall right now, but I'm gonna write them down as I'm trying to look at my notes to see if there's anything I missed. But um, I think the overall the biggest fails in this movie was the character of Benicio del Toro, the underutilization of Laura Dern and kind of killing her off. I think you're right. You know, they did kill off a lot of people in this movie, and I think it was kind of a way of almost like a purging in a way of you needed to kind of just move away from the old, and you need to start anew. And we'll end it with what Princess General Leia tells Rey. Rey says, you know, how can we build a rebellion on this? And she says, we have everything that we need. And you know, and I think ultimately Star Wars is about, I don't know, it's just it's about, you know,
Beating the odds.
it has everything that it
It,
needs. It's Star Wars. It's the good versus the bad. It's the light versus the dark. It's you know, it's growing up. It's moving forward. You know, Luke could have stayed on Tatooine. He could have turned a blind eye. He could have just not done anything, run away, but he didn't. You know, he pressed on. You know, and if it wasn't for that, we wouldn't have these adventures that we've been able to enjoy. Um, I think the problem from Star Wars stems from the fact that we love backstory, and we wanted to love the prequels because we wanted to find out how it all began, and we were so disappointed by that that now anytime we're presented with anything that's mystery in Star Wars, we want to know what that mystery, what's behind that mystery, and we better be satisfied with the result of it. And I think this movie said, no, you're not going to get that. And it doesn't, it's because it's not about that. It's not about who Ray's parents are. It's about who's Ray, you know, and how is that, how are you going to enjoy that moving forward? Like, this is Star Wars, guys. Stop thinking about, well, who's the parents and where did he come from and all this. Like, it's not about that. It's about Star Wars. It's about just enjoy the ride. You know, I think people back in 1977 when they saw Star Wars, they were just, you know, they weren't hung up on, well, who the heck is Darth Vader? Like, who is he under that mask? You know, and we didn't see what was under that mask until the third movie, and we still didn't fully know who he was until the prequels, and then we were vastly disappointed when we found out who he was. So we're always going to be disappointed when we get the answers that we think we want. I think Star Wars is about moving forward to infinity and beyond. See how I did that? I tied Disney into it.
yeah, that's pretty good. I hope
Well,
you're recording
anyway,
all this, right?
thank you for this talk, JC. And I hope that as you continue to process, you will grow to love. And I don't know, maybe as I continue to process, I might realize that I've been Phantom Menace here.
I think we're gonna do something like this.
Yeah, maybe in the next video in part 2, we might be coming from different avenues. I might be over here going, dude, I don't know. I don't think I like it anymore. And you're going to be over there going, I get it now.
All right, man.
Well, thanks everybody for joining us, for listening to our talk. Although sometimes it sounds like a rant, but our talk on The Last Jedi, Star Wars Episode 8. I can't believe we have Star Wars Episode 8.
Insane.
It's amazing. Insane. So stay tuned for part 2. We will try to get that out soon, and we'll try to be a little bit more specific and dive into the story and dive into certain things that happen in the movie, and not rant so much. We'll try to keep it tighter for part 2. This was kind of an overall, just we needed to let it out. This was clearing the room. This is just, we ate too much chili. We needed to let it out.
Oh my God. With that.
Yes, Chewie. Oh, you're cold? Really, Chewie? Really? Okay. One of my favorite jokes from Force Awakens, by the way. So, guys, if you haven't seen this movie, watch this movie. Listen, if you're so upset about The Last Jedi, just watch this one again, and it's going to make you feel so much better. All right? Okay, guys? So, thanks for joining us once again. We'll see you in part 2, guys.
Peace.
May the Force be with you.
And also with you.
Always.